We went to this little Muslim comedy show. Yeah, and it's really good. Yeah. And Penny Kill is one of the leading
Recording in progress.
That's the most organizations.
Sorry, we're finished.
Yeah.
Oh, well, like, oh, like, oh, wall, like, oh, wall, oh, wall.
I'm sorry, I'm late. I'm sorry, I'm late. I was just getting everybody in. Walaikum salam. How are you?
Thank you.
Please, enjoy, enjoy. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وبعد. So mashallah, I apologize for my extended tardiness. I was actually listening to a presentation at Cambridge that the author of this book gave about love. And his interests are actually much, I mean, you know, of course I'm just getting into the book as we are exploring it, but he's interested in love broadly, not just like he's saying love in the Quran, but it's not just about love of God. That's, of course, as a Muslim, a lot of his focus, a lot of his dedication is going to be on kind of the love of God. But I think he's looking at love broadly in terms of all of the ways that love is presented in the Quran. So did anyone get a chance to read 10 through 14? You didn't do your homework. And the thing is, I bet.
Waiting for us.
What's that?
The book is waiting for us.
Okay, alhamdulillah. I was gonna say, I bet otherwise, you're a completely distinguished student, mashallah, as is Adnan, as is Sania. Sania, what did you think? What were some of your impressions? Yeah.
It is a thesis.
It is, right, this is actually his PhD, yeah. He said it read a lot like a thesis. That's what I was worried about. I liked the fact that he kind of rooted the centrality of love to everything. Sometimes, he mentioned in the lecture that I was listening to, pre-modern people were completely preoccupied with the idea of love. What is it? When do we express it? How do we express it? How does one identify it? What does it feel like? How, and he said that modern people have really gone away from love, because in order to believe that love is more than just a chemical reaction, you'd have to believe in a soul. So if you don't believe that, I really don't think that moderns disbelieve in a soul. It's just not something we spend a lot of time talking about. It's not, right? But to talk about love as kind of a metaphysical reality, meaning, not just something that can be reduced to a chemical process or something that is just a kind of sublimated lust, right? Kind of a Freudian idea that love is just, it's just a flowery way of people expressing bodily desire for one another. Or, you'd have to actually believe in a soul. And if you believe in the soul, then he's saying the first thing is that the reason that our souls are always expressing love. And again, too, I think there's a tendency, because, it's almost like spirituality. Because we live in a context that is so materialistic, we tend to only reference spirituality in a positive way. Like when we say spiritual, usually the connotation is good, right? Whereas in the pre-modern context, something spiritual can be bad or it can be good, right? It can be, it's not that all spirituality is good spirituality. Some spirituality is unhealthy. Some spirituality is toxic. Some, like one of my teachers pointed out to me that many of the Arabs in the time of the Prophet, the Quraysh, they believed in the unseen. They believed in angelic forces, demonic forces, but they did not believe in an afterlife. They did not believe in the divine unity, but they believed in they had an extra physical cosmogony, kind of belief in what the world contained. But it wasn't a healthy spirituality. It wasn't a spirituality that would make them relinquish misogyny or classism or oppression or greed or avarice. It was just like some spiritual stuff that they were into, right? Similarly, when we talk about love, we talk about love like it's just something good. Love cures all. Love can be violent. Love can be destructive. Love can be possessive. Love can be unhealthy. I think the key thing is learning to love the right things and learning what you should not love, right? So the verse in the Quran that comes to mind, يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. Allah is talking about the devotion of the idol worshippers to their idols. And he says, يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. They love the idols like they should love Allah. Right? Now, Allah does not negate their love. Allah does not say it isn't really love. It's just pomp, circumstance, excessive celebration. No, they actually do love them. Right? They love these idols. كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, as they should love God. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. But those who believe, they love Allah more than even they love those idols. But both are loving. Both are actually loving something. In this talk that I was listening to in preparation for today's discussion, he was saying that love is always the result of one realizing beauty. That you realize beauty, you are wonderstruck by beauty, right? Beauty is something that you regard as wondrous, and then there's an inclination towards that beauty. And he said that it can happen as a bodily phenomenon, and it can also happen on the level of the soul. When it happens just as a bodily phenomenon, we call it lust, right? So he said that in Surah Yusuf, which I thought was really interesting, he said, Zulaykha, the wife of Potiphar, I believe his name was, she loved Yusuf, right? But her love expressed itself in wanting to physically possess him. But then the Quran mentions that when she attempted to seduce him, when she started to approach him, he saw something that reminded him of his Lord. Now, we don't know. It's left unclear what he saw. Some people say he saw something in the sky. Some people say he saw something in the decor of the home. But there's also an opinion that he saw something in her that reminded him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So he said they were both experiencing love, but Yusuf's love, he experienced the love, and it was like, it was something that, it was more inward, that he saw something in this situation that reminded him of his commitment to God, reminded him of his duty, that he didn't want to commit adultery. She also was enraptured by love, but it was very outward kind of expression. I want this to happen in this way right now. And, you know, when you think about love in that way, and there's actually a song by a great American singer named Al Green, in which Al Green said, love can make you do right and love can make you do wrong. You know, people that do things that are wrong will often cite love as their justification. Why did you do that? I couldn't help myself. I was carried away, right? So I think what he does a good job of showing that love is a more neutral concept than we typically think about it. I mean, it could be good, could be bad, could be nourishing, could be toxic, could be focused on the right things, could be focused on the wrong things. And the Quran actually mentions all of that possibility, all of those possibilities of love, right? You know, love can be all of these different things. I also appreciated that, you know, he mentions that the primary way in which God relates to his creatures is through love, right? It is a relationship of love. And I think for Muslims, that is, I don't know, that's not a very familiar notion. That's not a very familiar idea, right? That God loves his creatures, right? You know, I think we tend to think more about, I don't know, servitude, devotion, but we don't think about love, you know, quite as much. Any other insights? I think too, I appreciate all the different words that he mentions are used in the Quran for love. You know, so there's mawadda, you know, so when God talks about marriage, he says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, right? هو الذي خلق من أنفسكم أزواجا. God created from yourself mates. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And God placed in between their hearts love and mercy, but he uses the word mawadda. And I've looked at some explanations of this verse, and one of the most profound explanations that I can speak to as a married person is they say that mawadda, sometimes it's felt very strongly, and at other times it can recede. Like sometimes you feel it very, very strongly, and at other times, well, you guys just getting married. It's always in full flower. But as you get older, as you have more experience with each other, sometimes that, and it's always there, but it might be obscured by frustration, or might be obscured by disappointment. Hopefully not, but sometimes it, right, inshallah, but sometimes it is. But then Allah Ta'ala says, wa rahma, mercy. mercy. And they say that the mercy is the safeguard for the love. That as love is felt very strongly, or that love appears to be receding, as long as the couple has mercy between them, that love will always have an opportunity to be replenished. You see, it's when the love is receding and then there's no mercy between them, then the distance can grow, right? The chasm that separates them can become larger and larger. But as long as there is mercy, they can make their way back to each other. But love is not just this permanent state that one falls into. It's like, I love this person, it never changes. I always feel the same about them since day one. No, sometimes, even the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, two statements that come to mind. He said, Aisha, I know when you're really angry at me. And she said, you do? How? She said, he said, when you're happy and you're pleased with me, you finish your dua and you say to the Lord of Muhammad. But when you're angry with me, you say to the Lord of Ibrahim, alayhi salam. So sometimes you feel it very strongly, sometimes you don't. But the rahmah is a constant, thing. Another word for love in the Quran is ishq. Ishq is like passionate love through which one forgets him or herself in the love of the beloved. So like a moth in a flame, right? This is like a very passionate love, almost like, Majnun Layla or something like that, where the person is lost and, it's like, they're not loving out of the ego, right? Because the ego loves, but the ego is merely using the object of love to reflect its love for itself, right? Some people argue, actually, this is a very interesting book. Our love for our children, of what nature is it? Some people say it's the kind of the love of the other that makes you forget yourself. And some people say, no, you only love your children because they remind you of them, because they're an extension of yourself. That's when you see them, you think about, when I look at my son, I can just get misty-eyed just looking at him because he looks like me. Because I can just look at him and say, that's my son, and you feel something, So I think the book is off to a very technical start. The introductory reading was quite dry. That's why I did look at that video to try and get some more interesting tidbits to come in and just sprinkle the classroom discussion with. But I'm still excited to read this book. I think, this is, to my mind, this is the topic of topics, not just for Muslims, but I think for people. I think expressing love and understanding love is perhaps the most important thing, any of us will ever do, whether as individuals, members of families, spouses, parents, children, neighbors, friends, so I'm still excited, but we are off to a very slow start. Any follow-ups, ideas, questions, any ask? We have a few people online. We are trying to do kind of a collective reading of this book, Love in the Quran, inshallah. And it is very technical, as Sonia pointed out, but inshallah, we'll be able to get through it and enliven the reading with some classroom discussion, inshallah. Too poetic for you, Adnan. Questions, ideas? Yes.
So you mentioned, excessive spirituality
Mm.
as being a negative and kind of rooted that in the ancient Arabians kind of believing in, for example, the unseen afterlife. Could it also be like asceticism as toxic or negative spirituality? Like there's the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam criticizing people who said, "Oh, I'm gonna fast and never break my fast. I'm gonna pray and never stop praying. I'm not gonna marry."
I think this is one of the most important aspects of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is the emphasis is always on balance. And balance is what all of us struggle with as people. You know, we tend to double and triple down on the things that we're good at. You know, I love playing the games that I'm good at. I don't like playing the games that I'm not good at. You see, if you want to, anybody wants to play Scrabble, we can play. No, I can play, but we can play. Right? We can play. We love doing the things that we're good at. The things that we're not so good at, these are things that we tend to kind of, we shunt their responsibility. We minimize their importance, right? And when the thing that you're good at is demonstrably bad, it's very easy to see the spiritual priority in dealing with what you're not good at. So if you're not good at self-control, or you're not good at holding your tongue, or you're not good at making your prayers on time, it's very clear that okay, this is something that I need to kind of look at, the prophetic practice and alter my practice. On the other hand, when the thing that you're not good at is easily covered by pseudo-religious thinking. So say like, I'm great with kind of the spiritual aspect of my faith, but fulfilling my responsibility to people that have rights over me, not really a big thing in my religious practice. So if you tell me to pray, I can pray. Tell me to fast, I can fast. Making sure that my wife and my children are able to access of me what they need to, not so much. You know what I'm saying? Not so concerned with that. And I've seen many people like this, it would be very easy for that person to say, well, no, I'm ascetic in my disposition. I am ascetic in my makeup. You see, the dunya is not of concern to me. And the sunnah of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is also a remedy for those kinds of excesses, those kinds of, deviances, really. So the hadith that you are referring to, one person seemingly inspired by the example of the Prophet, I'm going to fast every day. I'm never going to break my fast, right? Because if fasting is a good thing, I'll do it every day. And I think the other part of this hadith that is relevant is that these were young men. Again, this is I'm sure this is a subjective observation, but many people say that women, just because of kind of how women are socialized, are just naturally much more balanced. Just, and being able to kind of, exist in that prophetic way. Whereas men are more given to mania. Because, when you say someone is manic, that means they're given to mania, right? I was listening to a lecture by Steven Pinker, and he was saying that in intelligence, men and women, as far as the empirical tests have shown, are pretty much the same, except that men are more given to mania. And he said that mania can express itself in genius, and it can also express itself in psychopathy, like being a psychopath. So you'll find that more serial killers are men, but also people that excess over things, and maybe are celebrated because of their singular devotion to this, this one guy who sat in his office thinking about this theory for 30 years and never came out, and he had no social life, and his children hated him. That person is much more likely to be a man who did that than a woman. It's much more likely that kind of mania is going to be something that men fall into. So these were all young men, and I think that they were given in this instance to a state of mania. I'm never gonna get married. I was like, why waste my time with that? I can just devote my life to prayer and charity. Who needs marriage, right? That's for the body anyway. I just finished reading this book, and I was thinking this definitely came from a man, but they were saying that in their attempt to mortify the flesh, like this idea that the spirit and the body are opposed, many Christians would brag, right? In the Middle Ages, I'm 40 years old and water has never touched my body, right? That this was like a sign of their piety, that I have no concern for this outward shell. All of my concern is for the spirit. I am not joking. For water has never touched my body. Part of what the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is there to do is to say that that's actually not a positive spirituality, right? That's actually a reprehensible expression of spirituality, even though in your mania you think of it as something good. Like that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, La ruhbaniyata fil Islam, that there is no monasticism in Islam, right? The Prophet ﷺ in this hadith is explicitly rejecting monasticism as an ideal. Like this isn't, all of this isn't like, a dispensation. Like we're not just living regular lives because we couldn't be monks. No, that's not the way. That's not the way, right? And it's interesting in the Quran, Allah says, I did not appoint that for them, meaning the Christian community. This is not something that I made an obligation upon that community, which indicates what? This was someone's idea. This is even better. This is the real Christ-like model, is to be divorced of the world entirely. Allah says, I never appointed that for them as an ideal. I never prescribed that for them as an ideal. And then Allah says, and many of them weren't even true to it. SubhanAllah. The Quran is really amazing. Many of them weren't even true to it. The ones that took on this mantle of the complete divorce of the world, they weren't even true to it. I would opine, perhaps they weren't true to it because is it really something one can be true to? You know what I'm saying? And notice too, Allah doesn't say all of them. So what about Joan of Arc? He didn't say all of them. He said many of them were not even true to it. It wasn't even something that they lived up to, but Allah didn't prescribe it for them, right? And then another one of them said, I'm going to pray all night and I'm never going to go to sleep. Which, of course he's a human being, so he probably just take like a short nap during the day, but he would never sleep at night in his life. And the Prophet ﷺ just said, who are these people? Men ha'ulai, like who are these people? Some days I eat and some days I fast. Sometimes at night I sleep and sometimes I pray. And I love the companionship of women. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَهُوَ لَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever wants something other than my sunnah is not upon my way. Now, I've given this hadith a lot of thought. And there's another thing that I think the Sunnah does for us that is perhaps even more relevant for us in our time. You know, it's a weird thing, Yusuf. Wallahi, it's weird. I travel all over the country speaking to mostly audiences of college students. And when I think about the things that people are really struggling with in terms of their Islam, there's always questions about gender. That's usually pretty significant. But then it's about slavery. What about slavery in the Quran? How, you know, because I think slavery is something that we have almost, you know, saved the morally depraved. We have kind of arrived at consensus concerning the unacceptability of a human being being property. Like in our context, we've arrived at that. That's a shared understanding that we have, that the human being is too noble to be possessed like a piece of chattel, like a piece of property. So the fact that the Quran does not completely outlaw enslavement would suggest to some people that its morality cannot be perfect, but rather should be historicized. It couldn't be like morality that's from God. It's just, you know, it was for that time, right? And of course, Muslims of great piety would be reluctant to say, but people of less pious bearing would say, we are morally more evolved than that. We are morally more mature than that. And my friend, Jonathan Brown, actually wrote a whole book at Georgetown. He wrote a whole book just about this topic because I think it's really emblematic of kind of a modern Muslim's challenge with, you know, reconciling, you know, a morality that was revealed in the 7th century with the 21st century morality and all of that tension and all of that struggle. But I find something, now first off, let me just say, the Quran does not tell anybody to go and initiate the practice of enslaving people. The Quran was revealed in a context that takes for granted that human enslavement exists. Like this is something that exists. In that regard, it is no different than the Quran being revealed in a context that takes for granted that poverty exists. But the Quran is not saying go and make people poor. It's just taking for granted that, you know, some people are poor. And so then we are given moral precepts through which we can manage poverty. You know, give your zakah. These are the rewards of charity, because poverty is something that does exist. Wealth inequality is something that does exist. Wealth disparity, it's something that exists. Human enslavement is treated in the same way. It's something that exists. These are the conditions under which it can exist. People should be treated this way. And all of them, you know, attempt to moralize or to make this very unfortunate circumstance more manageable for people in the circumstance, but nonetheless, it does not completely outlaw the process of enslavement. But I think that in that, there is a great mercy for us personally. And of course, I support across the board in the same way that I would support the eradication of poverty. I support the eradication of human enslavement. But I think the great lesson is that even the prophet of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is sometimes limited to working within systems and structures of great injustice and oppression. Like that's the best you can do. Sometimes the complete overhaul of a system is not possible for a moral man or woman. You can't do. So I think about that like in the light of like prison abolition. I might feel like you know, cash bail and pretrial detention is an absolute injustice. But if I'm not able to just abolish that, maybe the most prophetic thing I can do is work within that structure to make it something better, something more manageable, something more humane, something more moral for the people who find themselves in that quandary, for the people who find themselves in that dilemma. I think if we didn't have that example, we might be left with the idea that the only thing a moral person can do, you either completely eliminate it or you fail. And I think this would only produce inactivity. Like we can't do anything. No, so organizations like Believers Bailout, I think these are organizations we have because we know that sometimes you have to work within, you know, a difficult circumstance. Like sometimes poverty is a great example. It can just be managed. I wish I could wave a magic wand and there were no more people sleeping in tents, no more people under the viaduct, no more people living in extreme poverty in India, in Africa. That might not happen. The question becomes, okay, plan B, your contingency plan. If you can't wipe out this, you know, very unfortunate blight on the human experience, what will you do then? And I think that the Prophet ﷺ also shows us, well, look, if you can't completely remove something, this might be the best that you can do for it. And I think there's a model in that. And back to your question about asceticism, the same thing. If a person thinks that no, the moral thing to do is fast all the time, or never get married, or not own any personal property, or no, I think the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is saying, no, actually, that's not the most moral thing to do. That's not the best thing to do. And then linking it back to what we're discussing in this kind of book club or reading group, even about love. You know, the Prophet ﷺ would tell people, love moderately. See, we are people that we want to be enraptured, captured by love. He said, love moderately. Because you might need to distance yourself from something that you love, right? There's a verse in the Quran where Allah Ta'ala says, فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ فَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. Maybe you dislike something in which there is good for you. And maybe you love something that is bad for you. So if you are of the practice of loving moderately, even though you love something, you can say, man, I do love chocolate, but given my diabetes, I probably need to stop eating it. You see, that's actually, my wife, she loves that. Because me, I love with abandon. See, that's my personality. I'm completely off the handle. It says, and if I die in the love of the thing I love, then I die a happy man. But I don't think that's the Sunnah of the Prophet. I think the Sunnah of the Prophet is interrogate your love. Is this the right kind of love? Is this the right object of my love? Not just, if I love it, I don't care. I don't care what happens to me, right? Which is, I think that kind of love, this is the love that poets are often trying to capture, that I don't care, I don't care, right? I don't care what happens. I don't, if loving this is wrong, I don't want to be right. I think the Prophet ﷺ is cautioning us again, no, love moderately, right? I always tell people, whenever people ask for like a practical example, what does it mean to love moderately? I always say, if Donald Trump became Muslim right now, Andrew Tate did become Muslim. He said, love moderately and hate moderately. right? Because if you hate in an intemperate way, what happens when it's like, you hate this so much, but now you're not supposed to hate it. You might not be able to contain yourself. You're like, I'm not supposed to hate you, but I do. Right? Or I'm supposed to love you, but I can't. Or I'm not supposed to love you, but I do. Right? It's like to love, which, I mean, it just means, I think for all practical intents and purposes, that the love of God is above every kind of love. Right? The love of God is above every kind of love. And, you know, I think that, you know, there's protection in that, but there's also, that also requires a great deal of maturity, a great deal of acceptance, like accepting that, you know, for all the love that I have for everything that I love a lot more. And even the things that love me and the people that love me, my hope would be that they love a lot more than they love me. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's subhanAllah. Yeah, no, that they love a lot more. And I think that, you know, I've heard some very interesting kinds of kind of realizations about that. You know, people recognizing that even people they loved, like a lot of this in romantic relationships, like a person recognized that, you know, only in divorce did he recognize I love my wife too much. Right? Like, you know, a guy that said, when she left me, I contemplated killing myself. He recognized when I loved my wife in an unhealthy way, I loved her too much. Right? A woman that, you know, my husband gets married again, I'll kill him. SubhanAllah. I mean, you can leave him. You can decide that's not the situation for me, but you would kill him. Yes, my wife, I'm talking to you. Man, you want to kill me? No, you would kill me. No, you know, just stuff like that. I think, you know, we have a culture that makes all of this okay. Kill him. No, this isn't. SubhanAllah, this was twisted and it was sick. But what I think that he's going to point out is that we might be trying to make ourselves feel more safe by saying, you know, what happened in Streeterville, the Daisy man came and killed the woman and killed himself. We might want to say that wasn't love. That was some kind of demonic, it could have been, but it was just a very toxic, very unhealthy, very destructive, very egotistic kind of love. You know what I'm saying? That, you know, maybe if he had this class, we'd say, you know, some realization that, you know, this feeling that you have would be better expressed in kind treatment and sacrifice. This possessive, kind of egotistic kind of love, this can consume you. And ultimately it did. You know, and it ended up being a great harm to him and a great harm to her. And by extension, a great harm to their families. But it might have been a kind of love. So I think we often try to kind of like insulate love from critique by saying that wasn't love. No, it might have been, but it definitely wasn't the right love, right? It wasn't the right love, you know. Which I think this reading will prove interesting from that perspective. You know. Other ideas,
I
questions.
like what you said about whatever you love or whoever you love Allah more. And when I was younger, I would hear people say, oh, you should love your brother or your sister for the sake of Allah. And I guess from an immature point of view, I thought, well, that kind of is maybe just the phrasing of it, for the sake of Allah. It sounded like, well, I want them to love me
For me, yeah.
But as I've gotten older, it's exactly what you said, where you recognize that loving Allah enables you to love other people in the way that they should be loved. Or the way that you're loved.
No, it's beautiful. You know, now just tips for husbands. Never say to your wife, I love you for the sake of Allah. Just like never say you're beautiful on the inside or something like that. There's just certain things that you just don't say, you know. But I think that those are feelings that are very real, very strong. And I think, like, when I think about the difference between loving something for myself or for itself, both are possible. And loving something for the sake of Allah, it's all about why I love it. You see, if I love you because you're funny, because I find you funny, or I love you because, you know, you provide me with great comfort and things like that, I think it's still very real, very strong. But if I love you for things that God loves, and God loves humor, you know, God loves that we provide each other with comfort. But I think if I, you know, it's almost like, and this is gonna sound corny, but I don't care. You know, sometimes when things are at a low ebb between, say, like my wife and I, in addition to what we have personally, I love what she is independent of me. Like, this is someone that worships God and tries to live with good character. Like, independent of whatever emotional tension might be between, I love that. Like, I actually love that about this person. This is someone that, you know, tries to engage their relationships with ihsan. Right? Like, and I know if this is someone that attempts to be sincere, I really love that. Like, I love that independent of whatever I might be feeling. And I usually identify with that as a very pure kind of love. And so when that is the case, I find that and this is just like a practical example, the decision of whether or not we can be together is more of a logistical decision. Does this work? Does this bring out the best of me? Does it bring out the best of you? On the level of just sentiment, I actually love you, you know, for what you are. I don't know if we work well as a couple, and that's a different. We're still happily married, but I'm just saying that's what I mean to, like, I can love something for Allah and not even love it for myself. Like meaning I love those things, those qualities the person embodies, even if the person is not ultimately, you know, for me. I love that. I mean, I can love for the sake of Allah even people that I disagree with. Right? It's like I disagree with them, but, you know, I still love the quality that he or she is displaying in this regard. And I think that those are two very strong kind of interlaced expressions of love. And I also love the things that I find personally ingratiating about the person, you know, right? But both of those together, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes I say, I love you for Allah and for myself. You know what I'm saying? I love you for Allah and for myself. You know, those things that have nothing to do with me and those things that have everything to do with me. You know, all of it, you know, mashallah. You know what I'm saying? Other ideas.
Can you speak to unconditional love?
Yeah, you know, where I've kind of understood this because there was a time when I think as a younger, less experienced Muslim, you know, I used to say, you know, there's actually a concept of al-wala wal-bara, right? Al-wala is like is loyalty, and bara is like to separate independence from something, separate from something. And al-wala wal-bara means the conditions upon which your loyalty or your distancing yourself from something rest. They have all of these conditions that you could be with parents, could be with, you know, there's anyone besides God and the messenger of God. you could have some condition that makes you like, I am free of my responsibility or love toward this thing because of this condition or this quality. And so, people would say very unwise things. Oh my God, it's haram to love your mother if she isn't Muslim. Crazy stuff like this that we used to, you can't love them. And where I've kind of recalibrated, redefined, I think with some age and some maturity is the love you feel can be unconditional. And that might be something that's just irrepressible. I don't have a choice in that. I feel almost like my love for my children. I almost feel like I don't have a choice in that. I just love them. I don't, I can't really, I couldn't imagine myself not loving my children, like in toto. There may be something about, there's some things now I don't love about my kids, right? But their essence, whatever that means, I don't think I could ever not love them. My duty toward them, my responsibility toward them, my response to them is going to be dictated by, my love for my Lord Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. In the event that I can't, it's almost like, even though I love you, I can't condone this, right? And how that love is going to express itself alongside that duty that I can't, like I didn't raise you to be a drug dealer. I don't love that, right? And even then, it would just be, I don't love this thing about you. Or, I was, la qadar Allah, someone that we love leaves Islam. So I don't love this about you. And I don't want to be misinterpreted in my love for you as condoning what you've done, because I don't condone what you've done. But I really don't have a choice in loving you. Of course, I still love you, but it's not, I still love you, but my duty supersedes that love, because I love Allah more. You know what I'm saying? So when I say in that case, I think it's just about how we define love. If we're talking about some uncontrollable inclination that I have, then I think that is unconditional. Like I can't help. It sounds silly, but I don't think it's as silly as we think. Even like celebrities and people like that, that maybe our heart is attached to them in some way, and there's a love that we have for them. I'm actually willing to identify that as a kind of love. There's something you feel to like, I really like this person. Now, you probably won't condone everything they do. You probably, because you don't, there are things that you love more, right? Or there are things that dictate how you must engage or deal with or even think about this person, right? But that uncontrollable kind of leaning toward them, I don't know what extent, I don't know the extent to which we can prevent that from happening. I don't know, I don't know, it's something that I go back and forth on, can I make myself not love something that I love? Or can I just control myself in spite of my love for it? I actually do love this, but there are things that I love more. And then I think, maybe it's semantic, right? Maybe it's semantic. Maybe some people are, maybe our religious teaching dictates that we use the word love a little more sparingly. Like, I don't just say I love this, I love this, I love this. That. No, I don't. I'm more cautious to say I love some celebrity, I love this person, right? But no matter what you call it, the feeling is there. So there were some people, Muslims of very serious practice and devotion, that they felt something when Kobe Bryant died. And some of them were very ashamed to say, some of them were very ashamed to say, like, should I feel? It's like, I mean, I never met him. He was just a basketball player, I think what they were wrestling with was, maybe you get to choose what you call that feeling. I don't call it love. I call it infatuation. I call it, but what you felt you couldn't help. When you were informed that his helicopter crashed and he died with his daughter, and it was more than just a tragic story of, a man in the prime of his life dying in a terrible helicopter accident. It had a more personal life. I really saw people that, now, I didn't now, and how the way that I could recognize that difference was that I never had that feeling toward Kobe like that. I grew up in the Jordan era. When Kobe was really in the prime of his career, I was a religious extremist. I didn't watch television. When Kobe was really in the prime. So I didn't, I'm not gonna say extremist. I'm more serious Muslim than I am now. But I didn't watch television. So I didn't have that experience with Kobe like that. But people that did, they were fighting against themselves. And I think they were searching for language. What do they call it? And my thing, I'm watching it like, no, there was some, even though this is a distant personality, and maybe you feel ashamed that this feeling is there. It was there. I think that might be, I don't think we might not have control over that. Right? That might not be something we can control. What we do, I think we do have control over that, right? How I am going to act, my behavior, my conscious engagement, I can control that. But that feeling, you couldn't control it. You couldn't just like, you felt like, oh man, it was just something, it was something that was there. So I think that kind of love might be unconditional, if that makes any sense, right? That kind of like, I can't control. There's something there that I can't control. And I think when you identify unhealthy, unconditional love, I think it's important to inform people so that they can remind you, where it's kind of like, bro, this is something that it's not good. So I'm telling you, like, hold me back, man. Because I knew, in fact, I know there used to be a singer. None of you have probably ever heard of her. Her name was Phyllis Hyman. He was a great vocalist. And it was a brother, beautiful brother, loved his wife, but he also loved Phyllis Hyman. Never met Phyllis, in fact, he did meet Phyllis Hyman. That was a great thing. He did meet Phyllis Hyman. But crazy story, I don't know if this is in his book, but I feel like love has a certain magnetic quality. The thing, I feel like, this is kind of my new agey side. I feel like when you love something, there's something that you're emitting that's pulling it towards you. I believe that. So he said that, he had all of this love for Phyllis Hyman. And he said, somehow he wound up forming a relationship with this woman. And she was like a singer at the top of her game in the 1980s. And he said that he had to tell someone, like, smack some sense into me, because I will leave my wife and my children just to have an opportunity to be close to Phyllis Hyman. No, I would leave my wife and I can't help it. I can't help it, right? I think, and he had people like if you see me booking the plane ticket, just choke me and slap me and remind me, what about your wife, your kid? What's wrong with you? You can't do this. Like, he said, like, I need someone to pull me back from the ledge because I have a feeling toward this woman that I can't help. I will jump off the cliff. I will leave my wife and my children. And he was telling me, he said, He said that he was watching, I think, her on television or something. And he said that he just said to himself, "I'll leave my wife and my children for this woman." I mean, and you're looking like, that's crazy. But I think that is the kind of unconditional. What is she? That she's done nothing for him. That his wife, his children. But it was something that he couldn't control. Now, alhamdulillah, he didn't leave his wife. He didn't leave his children. I think he tried. So I think he tried. I think he told Phyllis, like, look, I'll drop everything right now. Because I think he became like a spiritual counselor to her, and she died of a drug overdose. He became like a spiritual counselor to her, and I think she was somewhere she needed help. Like, look, I'll drop everything and come to you right now. Just tell me. He loved her. And it's not. It wasn't a good thing. And now he recounts the story like it wasn't a good thing, but there was something that grabbed my heart that I could not help it. I could not repress it. I could not resist it. And so I think that even though it went against all of his ethos, his logos, what he thought, what he felt, I don't care. It's out of my hands, right? But again, I think that kind of feeling has to be it can't be conditioned, but it has to be, I guess, domesticated by responsibility, duty. That I love Allah more than Phyllis Hyman. I love Allah more, and Allah would love that I, stay with my family and continue to support them, and continue to build and be with them. But yeah, it can be crazy. It can be crazy, It can be crazy, man. It's crazy. Somebody just, yep. Why they give Saddam? Yeah, I'm not coming home anymore. I'm on tour with Phyllis. Somebody. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what? Just what? Huh? So it can really get crazy. It can really get crazy. But I think he covers a lot of that, in this text. So it should be interesting. So we did to 14. Let's go, if we can. Let's go to 22. Let's see if we can go to 22. I know we're doing it in small pieces because it is a very technical, as Sania said, it read like a thesis. So we'll go to page 22, inshallah. Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wal-'asr, inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilu s-salihati wa tawasaw bil-haqqi wa tawasaw bis-sabr. Subhana rabbika rabbil 'izzati 'amma yasifun, wa salamun 'ala al-mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil 'alamin. Oh, mashallah, man. Good to get some better weather today, man. It was cold over the weekend. Oof. I mean, it was cold, and it was so sudden. It was just like, I was riding down the street on my bicycle, and next thing I know, I'm like freezing in the house with both heating units on. Like, but now this is good. This is good weather. This I can never. It was over the weekend. It was cold, man. It got down. People often ask me when I travel, "You're from Chicago. Don't you get used to it?" No. No, you don't. You never get used to being that cold. It's like, but then again, I know. Then when I see somebody from like Florida or Texas, I think maybe I am used to it. Because they're like, I'm just like walking down the street commenting, man, it's cold. But they're like, how do you live here? I said, maybe I am used to it. It doesn't impact me like that. It just impacts me like, oh man, it's cold out here. I can still talk and have a conversation. It's not like, what are we gonna do? Let's get out of here. Other comments, ideas, questions? Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. MashaAllah, we'll finish the Ghazali book. then I think we began some conversations with me and Ali Dia. So other than that, all is well.
So are you going to discuss the secret marriages as part of Islam as it is?
Well, I'm curious about secret marriages. I'm curious about them. I think that we have. How real can I get? People are still online too. No. I think that there's a like in the Quran, and I think this is kind of revolutionary. Allah says that the believing men should lower their gaze. And then he says that the believing women should lower their gaze, which I think was revolutionary for the time. I think that now it's commonplace to us that women also have sexual personalities. But I think this idea that intimacy and relationships and lust is something that is felt by men and felt by women, and that men have to work to control themselves so as not to violate themselves or women, and women also have to work to control themselves. I think when it comes to something like secret marriages, we have a tendency to talk about it in a predator-prey kind of vein. Like it's these unscrupulous men that are preying on these unsuspecting women, and it's resulting in these secret marriages. Talking to people, men and women that have been a part of these unions, I don't think that that is the most accurate characterization of what's happening here. I think a more accurate characterization is you have men and women that want to have a physical relationship, okay? Concerned about usually the impediment of parental acceptance, that try to find some way to get around that, to circumvent the necessity of their families being involved in the marriage, right? The men are usually more eager and the women more reluctant. But I don't think that's because the men are just predators. I think it's because, and this is my theory, sex is always more consequential for women because of the prospect of pregnancy. So it's like, if we're gonna do this, is it gonna be birth control involved? Isn't there going, because, I could end up, conceiving a child and I'm not even publicly this man's wife. This is crazy. I'm really placing myself in a very precarious situation. And this is when the man begins coaxing and assuring her that, so yeah, it ends up being him kind of pulling her into it in spite of her reluctance. But I think her reluctance is a secondary reluctance. Like, it's not like I don't want the relationship. It's like, if this goes wrong, it will be much more consequential for me. And also to the prospect of, if this goes wrong, me getting married to someone, me disclosing that I've been sexually active, all of this can go much more wrong for me as a woman than it can. But the initial attraction is mutual. That's what I found. It's not like the initial attraction is like, no, I would never do something like that. But if you pressure me into it, maybe I would not. That's not how I see it happening. It's like there's affinity, there's infatuation, and for different reasons. It could be the man is already married, which is a very common one. It could be that their parents have other expectations of them. It's a number of factors that they decide, let's just do this on the DL, right? And they pursue, that plan of action. if you can call it a plan. Now, now, I have two counters. One, sisters, just don't do it, man. In fact, it never works out. It never works out. I mean, you have given away, so much that you're entitled to do that. You've given away so much. The idea that this will at any time be converted into a relationship of mutual respect, care, concern. I don't. Why? Why would it? So that's one thing. Like just don't do this. Don't do this. The second thing that I think is maybe a larger communal point is I think, and I realize I probably can be hanged in some communities for saying this, but I think we need to loosen the reins of marriage a little bit. I really do. I think we need to loosen the reins of marriage. I think that marriage should be easier, and divorce should not mean the end of a woman's romantic prospects in life. I think two people should be able to, not just have, a responsibility-free physical relationship, but I think if we are really responding to the challenges of our time, I think there should be something between just hookup culture and, house, cars, children, life insurance policies. There has to be something in between. There has to be, if marriage is, if marriage is something you can only do after the career is solid, the savings are solid, everything, I think you have a lot more people doing these kind of secret and other kinds of, illicit forms of kind of intimate coupling.
Part of the societal message coming down from the parents of don't get married until these things are.
I think it is. I mean, the idea. I think this idea, like, I have no experience with the opposite sex, and I'm about to pick this person I'm going to be with forever. I just think that's, it's like, damn, it's like, is there a way that we can create a context in which two young people can have a relationship, where they can still enjoy the oversight of families and the input, and can help to kind of get to know one another and be able to say, I don't think this is the right. I don't think, and that might have even been something of a physical relationship as they were trying to, I guess I'm saying, a kind of halal, not dating, but a kind of, we're married. I'm not saying marriage, but it doesn't have to be something that happens when you're, 37 and, stable in your career with hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. It's something that you can do as you are finishing graduate school or even finishing your undergrad. If this process is being overseen by families who care about these young people, and we've taken as much precaution as possible to see to it that these people appear to be fairly compatible. We've planned for success here. They appear to really like each other. But if they don't, it's not the end of the world. You know what I'm saying? I think that kind of, maybe even in the early stages of the relationship, she's still living at home with her parents. He's still living at home with his parents, right? But we're together. We can get together and go to a movie. We can get together and spend a weekend together because we are married. Right? We are actually married, but it's not like thrown in just at the deep end of the pool. I think that culture produces secret marriages and even worse, fornication. I mean, I don't know. That's just my idea about it. But I have 3 children, so don't quote me on any of this. You know? Yes.
What about, maybe converts or people who don't come from healthy family backgrounds? What are your thoughts about them?
Yeah, no, I think people that don't come from strong family backgrounds, like Muslim family, should definitely involve the community. Involve only because, what I recognize now is that doing this as an individual, it's just not, no, I don't think that's the healthiest thing. I think you want to, if for no other reason, just some accountability. Like sometimes I can feel when things are difficult. It does occur to me that, I did stand up in front of my wife's family, in front of her community. I've spoken with her mother, her father. They trusted me with the most precious thing, her brother, her friends, that I can feel this, in addition to God, right? This accountability. Like, this is a member of a family that I've been entrusted to treat kindly and care for. And if I can't do that, the only option for me is to just bow out of the game and just say, I don't think that I can give what is required of me in this situation. I think a lot of situations when things become very toxic and abusive and unhealthy is I think that accountability is not there. Right? People are just individuals. They're just, he doesn't feel, especially, and I'm particularly sensitive to this for sisters. He doesn't feel, it's like, she's just an individual, she's just a person to him. No, he needs to know that, no, if something goes wrong here, there will be consequences. There's going to be, you'll have to answer to someone. And that's what I worry about with people who don't come from families. That's why a lot of converts, they end up in these really whacked out marriages with these crazy people. Because, it's almost like, in addition to there not being any vetting, there's just no accountability. Somebody that marries either of my daughters, I mean, he'll have to know, like, I'm always a phone call away, man. No, seriously, bro. It's just, I don't want to get that call. Really, that I have to come and do something, in the middle of the night and spend the rest of my life making toll. No, I don't want that to happen. But that could very well happen. He needs like that. I don't want that to happen. But again, this is that uncontrollable love that I'm talking about. These are my children, man. And I would say the same thing to someone who wanted to take your hand, man. This is Sonia Merchant. This is somebody that I've watched learn and grow in their Islam for years, but I don't want to get that call to me, and we'll call where we got to come do something to you. No, now we got to come do something to you. Spend the rest of our lives making toll because we broke this brother's arm, broke his leg. We don't want to do this to you, man. I would look him dead in his eyes, bro. I don't want to do this to you, man. I swear to God, I don't, man. But it get like that because we really care about the women in our families. We care about the women in our communities. We're emotionally invested in them. We don't want to see it get like that. And I just feel like, and I hate to say this, but a man, he needs that. He needs to feel you. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Lower your voice, watch your mouth. Don't say that. Because this could go a different way. You see what I'm saying? This could go a different way. But we don't want to see it go there. I feel like, I just think that's important for women. I think it's important for women. Otherwise, I think men just, I'm not saying we can't be trusted, but it needs to, an Egyptian friend of mine, he told me that in Egypt, in some of the rural areas, a man will mistreat a woman, verbally abuse her, even physically abuse her. And if her family responds strongly, he'll never do it again. But if they don't, he'll feel like he can do it. He says it's horrible. He says it's horrible, but in a lot of the rural areas in Egypt, is how it is. If he does something and her father and her brothers respond very strongly, don't you ever, they'll know, nah, I can't do that. Right? But if nobody says anything, he knows, I have impunity. I can do whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. Yeah. And I just feel like that mechanism of accountability, even if we're not breaking anybody's arms or legs, but even just shame. Like, man, we trusted you to marry a sister in our community. It was like a precious jewel to us. And you did this. You jerk. You slime ball. You know, it's like, man, stay out of our gatherings, man. We don't even want to see you around here. Like some of that is good. Some of that, you know what I'm saying? Some of that is good, you know. And also too, okay, Obey, you know, the healthier side. Support, right? I'll be honest. When I've picked up the phone many times that I don't understand what she's saying, man. Help me. You raised the woman. What am I missing here? Well, security is very important to her, Obey. Transparency is very, okay, help me. You know, what am I seeing here? I don't understand why she's so upset about this. See, I want someone that marries Sonia to know, you can just call me. You can call me and say, babe, I just need some help as a husband. I don't know a lot about being a husband. You got any tips for me? Yeah, we can give you some tips. I think all that's very important. But when you just marry just as an individual, none of that's present. You know what I'm saying? So involve the community, pull the community in. It's better. Inshallah. So with that, inshallah, we'll close. Inshallah. Always good to see everybody. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.